My name is Matt Cush. This is a case study for EDL 850. This case study involves a copyright issue at St. Regis, a K through 8 school in a rural area. I will play the role of the principal, Keith Sample. Mrs. Lynn, the library/media specialist, made copies of copyrighted software programs and gave them to teachers. All of the teachers were happy to accept the copies except for Mrs. Brandon. She is new to the school with 3 years of teaching experience. She was concerned about the copyright violations because at her previous school, teachers were not allowed to break copyright laws. Mrs. Lynn was not happy that Mrs. Brandon would not accept the software. Mrs. Lynn said that they need to make every penny count. Mrs. Brandon stopped by Mr. Sample's office to let him know about the situation. The next day, Mr. Sample talked to Mrs. Lynn about the situation. He informed her that what she did was a violation of copyright. Mrs. Lynn did not seem to care and was more interested in talking about how she saved the school money. She also mentioned how the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, helped make copies. The only two people that are concerned with the copyright violation are Mr. Sample and Mrs. Brandon. Everyone else seems to be okay with breaking copyright law to save the school money. What these people don't realize is that violating copyright could potentially cost the school a very large amount of money. In this situation, there are definitely some legal and ethical issues. Mrs. Lynn illegally made copies of copyrighted software with the help of the PTA president, Mrs. Evans. Mrs. Lynn then distributed the copies to staff members. This is illegal and a violation of copyright. The companies that made the software have been harmed by the actions of Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans. Mrs. Brandon faces an ethical issue because she knows it is wrong to use illegally made copies of copyrighted material. I wouldn't say that the other teachers and staff that are using copyrighted material are harassing Mrs. Brandon, but she does feel like a bit of an outsider for not taking the pirated software. Mrs. Lynn is also putting the school at risk for a lawsuit by making these copies for staff members. Staff members are breaking the law by using the software. Using the software should be seen as unethical, but it seems most people in the school are more concerned about saving the school money. In the long run, a lawsuit could cost the school a lot of money. What happened in a single sentence? A school staff member made copies of copyrighted software and distributed them to teachers in the school, causing one teacher and the principal to bring up copyright law. The people involved in this case. Mr. Keith Sample, the principal of St. Regis for the past 3 years. He is not originally from St. Regis and has had to work hard to establish positive relationships. Mrs. Lynn, the library/media specialist. She is the one that made the copies of the software. Mrs. Williams, an experienced second grade teacher at St. Regis. Mrs. Brandon, a second grade teacher with 3 years of experience at another school. She is the only teacher that took issue with the illegally copied software. Mrs. Evans, the PTA president, and also helped Mrs. Lynn make copies of the software. The place. St. Regis is located in a rural area 25 miles from a large city. It is a small town with 2 grocery stores, 1 drugstore, and a few other businesses. The community of St. Regis is a close community that does not accept strangers readily. The program. The school serves students of grades K through 8. For high school, the students are transported by bus to the city. The student population is 420 students, which requires 2 teachers for every grade level and 2 special education teachers, one for grades K through 4 and another for grades 5 through 8. Financial support for the school comes from 2 major fundraising efforts each year. In the fall, there is a combination gift wrap candy sale. In the spring, there is a PTA-sponsored spring fling race. The school also gets a meager state allocation. I believe St. Regis is a public school. The question is, could the conflict situation or decision be damaging to the community or the stakeholders? The answer to this question is yes. The individuals and groups that have an important stake in the outcome are mostly everyone in the community of St. Regis, including community members, but especially the students, staff, and parents. Have all relevant stakeholders been consulted? The answer is no. Students and parents have not been consulted, neither have staff members. The only people involved are Mr. Sample, Mrs. Lynn, Mrs. Evans, and Mrs. Brandon. These are the only people that are aware there is a copyright situation. Mrs. Evans may not even be aware. As the principal, I can learn more about the situation by talking to other staff members. I could ask how many times have they used copies or had copies of software made for them. I believe that I do know enough to make a decision. What are my options? The first option to consider is taking no action. I could allow the copies of software protected under copyright to continue to be used. Most likely the software company would never find out about it, but there is a potential consequence. Maybe the company would find out and file a lawsuit. The lawsuit could cost the school a lot of money. The second option is to destroy all of the copies of the software and let staff members know that we will not use copied software. Most likely this would make some people mad, but it would protect the school from a potential copyright lawsuit. A third option is to ask the software company for written permission to make and use copies of their software in school. They may say no, but you never know unless you ask. There are no consequences to asking unless they find out that copies have already been made. Then there is a risk of a lawsuit. A fourth option is to actually buy the software instead of making copies. It will cost more money, but will protect the school from a lawsuit. I will now evaluate the four options. If I turn a blind eye to the copyright violation, the pros are that the students and staff will get to continue using the software without the school having to pay a lot of money. The con is that if we get caught doing this, the school could be sued and lose even more money than it saved by making copies. If I make the decision to destroy all copies and inform staff that we will not use copyrighted material, we will not be at risk for a lawsuit. That is the pro. The con is that teachers, staff, students, and even community members would be mad at me. Maybe. If I ask the software company for permission to make and use copies, the pros are if they say yes, we can make and use copies. If they say no, at least I tried. The cons are that maybe the company would somehow find out that copies of their software were already made and used. This would most likely lead to a lawsuit. If I decide to just purchase the software, the pros are that there would be no risk of a lawsuit and the students and staff would be able to use the software. The con is that the school would have to pay a lot of money for the software. After reflecting on the options, I will now make a decision. My decision is I would destroy all the copies of the software and let staff know that we will not use copied software. In order to implement the decision with the greatest care and attention to the concerns of all stakeholders, I would explain and give real-life examples of what happens to schools that get caught violating copyright laws. I would let them know that I am sympathetic to their concerns, but a copyright lawsuit is something that I want our school to not get involved in. I am doing this because it is not worth the risk. If the staff really needs the software, I would check the budget to see if it is possible to purchase it. But if the money isn't there, using copies is still not an option. All stakeholders would be made aware of this decision, and a copyright policy for the school would need to be implemented if there isn't one in place already. I do believe I have identified creative options, and I chose the best option. I will now talk about implementing my plan. It does involve all the stakeholders, but there is a problem. Many of the stakeholders will not support my decision. They are not concerned with copyright law. They are concerned more about the school saving money. So for this reason, I may not consult with all stakeholders, even though my decision is made with their best interests in mind. I will communicate with all stakeholders, though, and continue to promote both student and adult success and well-being by keeping the school free from a lawsuit. The steps I will take are, first, I will have a meeting with staff. In the meeting, we will reflectively evaluate the current copyright policy, if there is one. If there isn't one, I will create one along with input from staff members. The staff members that disagree with the copyright policy will be heard, but the consequences of violating copyright law will be explained. I will inform staff members that the software copies are to be destroyed and we will not use them in school. Second, the copyright policy will be made available to the community stakeholders. Third, I will collect all of the pirated copies and destroy them. What may happen? I think there will be some resistance from staff members, but they will be told that this isn't optional. It is school policy. The consequences will be made clear and could include losing your job for violating the policy. Another likely outcome is that teachers will agree, maybe reluctantly, to follow the policy. All stakeholders need to know, including staff, students, and community members. I do believe I can deal on my own with Mrs. Lin and Mrs. Evans. They will be warned of the consequences of making any more copies of software. There has to be a plan B. If this decision does not work out, plan B would only be used if staff members continue to make and use pirated software. After reflectively evaluating the situation, I would be forced to spend money that the school may not be willing to spend to purchase actual copies of the software in order to avoid a lawsuit. I would hope that Plan B would not be something that I would have to resort to. I would be forced to do this because firing nearly every staff member doesn't seem to be a realistic option. This assignment allowed me to promote the current and future success and well-being of each student and adult by applying the knowledge, skills, and commitments necessary to improve management, communication, technology, school-level governance, and operation systems, to improve data-informed and equitable school resource plans, and to apply laws, policies, and regulations by addressing a copyright violation issue and coming up with a solution that protects the school. I was able to reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws and policies and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being by stopping our staff members from making copies of copyrighted software and distributing them. Thank you.